The Overwatch developers are finally fixing ranked mode. In the Director's Take blog posted today, Keller responds directly to Eskay's video, which got a lot of traction in the community, and also looked at the scale and scope that we're looking at for ranked mode fixes. Let's jump into the blog post. Director's Take, looking to the future of competitive Overwatch. Hello everyone, we've seen a lot of conversations around competitive in Overwatch lately, and I'd like to take most of this week's Director's Take to address it. But first, let's have a quick hero update. We made several changes to Illari when she was enabled for ranked. Most notably, the healing for her pylon was reduced, and her ultimate projectile size was decreased while it no longer pierces barriers. The pylon nerfs effectively equalizing the healing between her pylon and solar rifle. Pre-nerf, the healing pylon accounted for about 62% of her healing. Now that number is 55%. This change also brings her more in line with other damage forward supports, aka DPS, that are in the support role, whereas before, she was outputting healing numbers close to Lifeweaver and Mercy. And remember guys, when he talks about this, he means global statistics across the board at all tiers of play, because those numbers do change as you get to other tiers where maybe like an Ana who hits everything perfectly might heal more. But for most players, Lifeweaver and Mercy with their auto-targeting support provide the most consistent heal numbers for the team, and even you might say at higher tiers as well. Back to the blog post. We're happy with those latest changes and the additional changes made to Captive Sun, which is Illari's ultimate. We'll continue to monitor her damage output and see if anything needs addressing next season. Additionally, we're looking at Roadhog's underperformance and targeting his rework for the mid-season update in Season 7. All right, devs, you're looking to respond to community sentiment nowadays. Let's try this one on for size. While Hog does need the rework that they've prescribed for him, he also has another problem this season where his biggest counter tank, Orisa, is just giga-buffed through the ceiling. This is something I'd like to hear them talk more about and be more honest about how counter-pick heavy the game has gotten. I love the game enough that I can look over it even though I don't love that aspect of it and just have adapted my play and expectations. But some heroes are going to get double dumpstered when their stats are kind of low and the mainstream top tank auto counters everything they do. Point being, even if Hog gets an interesting team utility of some kind, Orisa being giga oppressive, or now Zarya, which just got buffed as well, might make it hard for him to compete anyway. The way I've adapted to this is just leaning into my flex player nature, working harder to commit to more heroes. I can do that, so that's the route I've gone, but most of the community can't, because not everybody's got time to play the game lots of hours, so they just catch L's because there's gaps in their hero pool, and most of the community has that. All right, we'll have them deal with that another time. Another point of interest for me that I want to hear them comment on is the state of supports, which I feel we were the only channel that seemed to understand how big the support role passive nerf was gonna be. Let us know in the comment section down below how you're adapting to that new 2-second auto self-heal, keeping in mind in a lot of situations now, we're back to the world where supports kind of don't have a passive, because if you just take a bit of damage, within 2 seconds, it'll never kick in. Now, I think it might be fair because supports were so darn strong, but it certainly really changed the balance hierarchy of what characters were performing and why. And I haven't fully collected my thoughts on it yet. Okay, on to the main subject now, ranked mode. Aaron says this: over the past few weeks, more people have been talking about competitive play. Conversations really started to trend following a video from Eskay. I'd like to join on the conversation. I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I want to share a glimpse into what the development team is thinking about the direction that we're going to go with competitive play in the future. The team has been working on changes to our competitive mode for some time, but moderate to major changes to the mode won't find their way into the game until sometime down the road. I won't be able to address every issue that people are discussing in this piece, but I'd like to address some major ones. We'll share more details on specifics as we get closer to releasing the changes. Some feedback we've heard about the current system is that you're not pleased with how much information about the match and your progress is hidden from you. We understand you want to know how the system works, especially regarding how your rating goes up, down, or even changes at all when you get a competitive update, along with trying to figure out how fair a match is at the start of a game. For instance, we've seen players go 5-2 and be demoted at their next competitive update. Many of their reports investigated so far have occurred due to MMR decay. For instance, if you typically pick DPS and go a significant amount of time between playing other roles, then MMR decay could kick in between updates for lesser played roles. Since decay is tracked per role, this could pull your rating down far enough to cause the demotion. And I believe what he's saying here is in between the card. Like it's happening behind the scenes and the card card goes 5 and 2 and you still get demoted anyway, it looks strange. He says, when players see this happen, they would justifiably assume there was an issue with the system. Many of the changes that came with our competitive 2.0 update were based on values centered around pulling frustrating moments out of the experience, but came at the cost of obscuring other information. Going forward, we're shifting our values to provide more transparency to the mode. This doesn't necessarily mean that the older skill rating measurement is or isn't coming back as we continue to iterate on the possibilities. We very much appreciate your continued feedback. We want you to have a better understanding of what your true rank is and why wins and losses cause it to move up and down based on the general skill level of players in the match. Additionally, we understand the way we track progress can cause losses to feel more frustrating. Currently, the system will provide a rank update after every 5 wins or 15 losses. After each win, progress is shown on a screen during the end of round flow, but losses are not. When the game doesn't acknowledge the loss, it can feel as though the whole match was a waste of time. We're making changes so that system will contribute your progress toward a rank update after every match, whether you win or lose, so no match feels like a complete waste of time. We're also talking about the top 500 leaderboard and some of the unique issues for that experience. If you are in top 500, you are among the most competitive players in the community, and we think there are additional needs and issues than the rest of the community. One example of a unique problem is the difficulty of climbing the top 500 leaderboard later in the season versus playing early in the season, where it's easier to place higher. They also have more issues with queue times, grouping with friends, and finding fair matches when the spectrum of skill in this group can still be fairly substantial. We also believe the top 500 experience is a more full-featured experience than how other players interact with competitive. Competing with and passing other players on the ladder makes the top 500 leaderboard exciting. It's not something that most players get to experience. Eventually, we'd love to find a way for players of other ranks to have an experience in climbing the ranks that feels more granular than just moving in and out of skill tiers. This is a long-term goal and is something we are just thinking about right now. I want to put a pin in that idea, and we're going to return to a few others, he said. Finishing off the blog post now, he says, Overwatch 2 is always evolving and growing. We'd like it to be doing that in a way that is exciting for players and in a direction that they would like. One of the best ways to accomplish this is to have a healthy dialogue between players and developers. Some of these competitive changes will be made in the short term, like how we treat MMR decay, but other issues will be handled with broader changes coming early next year. Ultimately, we are aiming to make the system more transparent, add more frequent reporting, open up some of our restrictions for grouping at high skill tiers, and look to introduce new competitive rewards. Let's keep the conversation going. I mean, that's a bombshell of information. That's the whole roadmap, basically. And there's a lot in this post I want to go back at and dissect a little bit. So first of all, the suite of things, the plan, the roadmap that we're looking at, they use the group queue, I think, as just like a test experiment, because it doesn't seem like something they want to keep. And also the queue times were really long. But remember, they're always doing this crawl, walk, run thing. And if they're going to ease up on the grouping restrictions, it seems like they were just trying to collect data from that mode to see what they could get away with the matchmaking. They talked about competitive rewards before. In Overwatch 1, we might get animated sprays that were distinct to each season. Now, a lot of these were kind of replaceable, uninteresting, without a lot of personality. But towards the end, they started giving sprays that were golden and shiny for character weapons. So peeking into top 500, I was quite excited to get the Junkrat grenade launcher golden spray. I use that one often. But other than that, a lot of those competitive rewards for reaching any accomplishment were kind of forgettable. Now, they're obviously trying to change that with the progression system, which I like a lot. And earlier in the post, Aaron talked about trying to make like a tier leaderboard for medal rank players even, or every player really. That's like a long-term goal. And when he says we're just starting it right now, that means like the end of next year, maybe. But something that I found interesting in a game that I go way back into when it comes to content creation is in Black Ops 2, they really were trying to make Call of Duty more competitively viable. They were pushing esports a bit more, and the competitive system was interesting and a bit robust even. This is many, many years ago. But in that game, you would have your main rank, and it was almost exactly the same as the StarCraft system or the Overwatch old system in terms of like medal ranks, Diamond, Master, Grandmaster, that existed. But then in each tier, you were placed into a sub-tier where you were like distinctly competing against players in that tier, if that makes sense. So you would get your own little leaderboard to look at. And what I think this is sort of that percentage-based system that they added in the last competitive update, where really what you're supposed to look at, if you really want to figure out and discern your SR, you can kind of do it, where you can tell what the SR system would place you when you add up where your main rank is, and then add in the additional how many percentage of players that you're ahead of, which it comes up at the bottom of the card when you complete a competitive update. All the information's kind of there still. You just have to do math to figure it out. So if you're Diamond 1 and you're nearly Master, that would kind of equate to the range of 3,400 in the old system. Then they add on that modifier of how many percentage of players you're ahead of. So if that number's low, then you're more on the lower end of that. And if that number's high, and you're ahead of 99% of players, that means you're like a couple SR points away from getting into Masters. That's how that works. So oftentimes, because the competitive updates are more frequent now, because it's based on 5 wins, it's very possible that you often don't get a substantial update in that. So there's a bit of a problem, in my opinion, where the devs respond a little bit too quickly to discrete feedback and lose the holistic impression of what the system does. Like, it was 7 games for an update, which, okay, that felt long, but it also was more substantial when you got it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If we reduce this down to the minimum, I mean, we could just get an update every match like we did in Overwatch 1 and just go up or down circa 30 points, which is really what it's doing anyway. And in my humble opinion, the card system is not useful for a competitive ranked mode. I think it'd be interesting if you put some of those visuals into like your player history, right? So you can see the timeline of the games that you had when you're looking back. Okay, these were my wins. This is my stats. These are my highlights. And you can even go back into the replays of those matches. The visuals of that can work for that, I think. But the information we need as players to know what our rank is doing and why, as Aaron admits, needs to be more transparent. So I'm happy to hear that that's going that way. Now, Aaron does not give a hard answer on whether SR is or isn't coming back. My assumption would be is they would try to design a new system that kind of splits the difference between the concepts they're trying to nail between transparency as well as reducing ranked anxiety. So I think I'd anticipate seeing a hybrid of the two concepts. Overall, losing your rank sucks, right? For me personally, in the old system in Overwatch 1, I definitely got more loss aversion seeing the rank go down immediately. What the card system does is like delay that later. You know it's coming anyway, so it might just give you anxiety over when it does come, and somehow it like robs the satisfaction of those wins because you don't actually get the number going up each time. You have to wait until it fully completes, and then your previous losses might outweigh it anyway, and there's just a lot of silliness with it. Losing sucks. They can't fix losing sucking with visual trickery. Guys, that's everything for today's video. If you'd like more ranked discussion, you can check out our response to Eskay's Why Ranked Feels So Miserable. And I think one of the major disagreements I have with Eskay is I do think balance matters a lot. Not that balance is going to solve anything, but the nature of the game booms and busts certain players' hero pools based on the balance state, which makes the rank state naturally tumultuous. There's a vocab term for you. That's been it for me. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.